Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Radha Girivardha Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Banachari Jamuna Tera Banachari Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jamuna Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Banachari Jamuna Tera Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tadasara Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Arata Koti Vaishnava Binda Ki Gantharaj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi Namo Vishwadaya Kisvasta Bhagavani Bhagavani Prabhu Namane Namo Vishwadaya Kisvasta Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Sadhvara Devi Gurumani Vishani Visheshani Vari Paschachatya Satane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Devaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 6, The Activities of Lord Rishabhdev, text number 5. Is that correct? Yeah. Kamo manyu mado lobha Shoka moha bhayadayaha Karma bandhas chayan mulaha Svi kuryat konu tad buddha Kamo manyur mado lobha Shoka moha bhayadayaha Karma bandhas chayan mulaha Svi kuryat konu tad buddha Kamo manyu mada lobha Shoka moha bhayadayaha Karma bandhas chayan mulaha Svikuryat konu tad buddha Kamo manyur mado lobha Shoka moha bhayadayaha Karma bandhas chayan mulaha Svikuryat konu tad buddha Kamo manyu mado lobha Shoka moha bhayadayaha Karma bandhas chayan mulaha Vikuryat konu tad buddha Kamo manyur mado lobha Shoka moha bhayadayaha Karma bandhas chayan mulaha Svikuryat konu tad buddha Kama, lust, manyu, anger, mada, pride, lobha, greed, shoka, lamentation, moha, illusion, bhaya, fear, adaya, all these together, karma bandha, bondage to fruitive activities, cha, and yat mulaha, the origin of which Sri Kuryat would accept. Kaha, who? Nu, indeed. Tat, that mind. Buddha, if one is learned. The mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Purport: the mind is the original cause of material bondage. It is followed by many enemies, such as anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. The best way to control the mind is to engage it always in Krishna consciousness. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayo. Karo Hare Mandira Majanadishu. Since the followers of the mind bring about material bondage, we should be very careful not to trust the mind. Om Jnana Timirandasya Kinanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Pena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Dadati Sva Padantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. I decided not to wear the garland because it's got an explosive combination of flowers in it for me at this time of the year. And this last week last few days I've had no problems. Well, not no problems, because there's no such thing as no problems in the material world, but at least my eyes haven't been stinging and watering. Okay, so calm. What a list. Calm, manu, krodha, or anger. Mada, which is kind of like mad, right? Pride. Lobha, greed. Shoka, lamentation. Moha, illusion. Bhaya, fear. So, Prabhupada says here, the mind is the original cause of material bondage. Why? Because it has many enemies. That attack the mind. And Prabhupada's simple solution, very simple solution, is to always keep the mind busy. Right? The mind is unstoppable. The deity of the mind is Aniruddha, and Aniruddha means literally he who can't be stopped. Right? If Krishna wants something, he gets it. What's that sloka that Prabhupada quotes? Mare Krishna rake Krishna mare ke. Something like that. If Krishna wants you dead, then you're finished. If he wants to keep you alive, then nobody can kill you. So Krishna is all powerful. And the mind is very tricky because and Krishna mentions this in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that the mind can be the best of friends or the worst of enemies. And it's the worst of enemies when it's not controlled and engaged in Krishna's service. Otherwise, if it's acting in Krishna's service, then it is a wonderful ally. Just like, you can have a problem. And hard to work out what the solution is, right? But the mind is always ticking away, chipping away at all of the problems, right? And then, you wake up in the morning and you hop in the shower and then all of a sudden the solution comes, right? This happens to me very often, And so if we've got the mind thinking about Krishna and thinking about Krishna's service, then it can be a wonderful ally because it's working all of the time. And it has different levels of activity. But if the mind is not positively engaged, then that same mechanism can work against us. Because it'll be operating and contemplating and thinking, feeling and willing is what goes on within the mind, right? And so then, if it's not operating on the transcendental or on the spiritual platform, when it's engaged in devotional service, then it'll be doing the opposite in material activities. It'll be thinking about engaging in material activity even the intelligence may, with the intelligence we're able to discriminate. Right? Intelligence means the ability to be able to distinguish between things and to work out what is good and what is bad. Even our intelligence may, we may work it out, that whatever we're meditating on is not good for us, but still the power of the mind overwhelms the intelligence. And so we keep thinking about things that are not beneficial for us. And as a consequence then, the mind becomes overcome by these enemies, beginning with lust. And controlling the mind is pretty much the pivotal point, or the essential element of bhakti practice. Right? And of course, it's focused very much on chanting Hare Krishna. And especially we control the mind or we're freed, we're liberated from this the tyranny of the materially absorbed mind by chanting Hare Krishna. Right? Because by hearing, and it's a very simple process, but not necessarily easily applied. But that is, we absorb the mind in the sound vibration of the Maha Mantra, and by absorption in that regular absorption in that sound vibration, we're able to turn the mind or cleanse. Jeto dapana marjanam, right? Bhavamaha devagni nivapanam. We can extinguish the fire. And this lust, greed, anger, these are all symptomatic of the fire of material existence. We get burnt by these things, pretty much impelled by the mode of passion, impelled by the mode of ignorance. Passion pursued converts itself into ignorance, because our desire to be happy, to enjoy in a material sense, is always going to be frustrated by reality. Right? What is it? Adyantavanta kunteya nateshu ramate buddha. And here here it's mentioned, Buddha. The intelligent person doesn't pursue these yehi samspasaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. The contact with the senses, the contact of the senses with the sense objects, everything in the material world looks attractive, especially influenced by the mode of passion. But then when we touch the senses with the objects of the senses, and there may be some pleasure in that. But I think Prabhupada mentions somewhere in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that pleasure is actually the enemy, right? The enemy of the living entity. Because in the end, it all degrades into, what is it here? Shoka, moha, madness also. Then we have material facility, and then we think, yes, I am so accomplished, I am so wonderful, I'm so advanced. And when the reality is usually the everything in the material world has a beginning, a middle, and then an end. And in the beginning, and even in the middle, there may be some pleasure, but ultimately, in the end, everything is taken away from us. Right. So, we're very fortunate to have the Maha Mantra as our weapon, if you like, This is Lord Chaitanya's weapon, the Maha Mantra. And Lord Chaitanya's, or Krishna's mission, Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Chatuskritam, is to save the devotees and destroy the miscreants. Right? And in previous yugas, that was done in all sorts of dynamic ways, but very often meaning, you're killed. But Lord Chaitanya's mission in the Kali Yuga is the devotees are protected and the demons are destroyed by the Maha Mantra, by the sound of the Maha Mantra, or by hearing and then by chanting. Shravanam Kirtanam, the beginning of bhakti. And so this is our methodology for cleansing the mind of the influences of material association in the form of Kam, Kam, Manu, Mada, Lobha, Shoka, Moha, Bhaya, fear. And this is the list. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 enemies of the mind. Prabhupada mentions, Bhaktivedanta Thakur also mentions the 6 enemies of the mind. Manu is usually krodha, anger, and this is mentioned in the beginning of the Nectar of Instruction in the purport to the first verse. And of course, that those instructions of the Upadeshamrita are very relevant to this point. One who's intelligent shouldn't put faith in the mind, but rather the mind should be always engaged in devotional service. So even when we're sleeping, we're chanting, right? When we're sleeping, we're thinking about Krishna. Because the mind works, whatever it does, it's always doing something, can't stop it. So the proper way to relieve the mind from these enemies is to purify it through engagement in devotional service. What's the first word? What's the first word of that verse? The first verse. Vacho vegam. Right? Vacho vegam. So, speaking, vacho vegam. Talk about Krishna. Manasa. Right? Krodha vegam. There's the thinking part, engaging the mind. And anger. And all of these which come along with the mind. Manasa krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udara pasta vegam. So all of these pushings which come into the mind, right? These are all of these ideas and pushings. They all come into the mind and, make us go in all different directions. So the simple solution is to chant Hare Krishna and to be engaged in devotional service, to be active. I read a very interesting, nice story this morning from Hari Sori. Prabhupada was talking to a gentleman, and this gentleman said that he's seen the Vaishnavas and they're all lazy men, chant, sleep and snore. Chant, sleep and snore. Prabhupada says, you haven't seen a Vaishnava. This is not a Vaishnava. you haven't seen a Vaishnava. And Prabhupada said, there are two historical battles in the Vedic literature, or in the history of the world. That is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and the culmination of each of these stories is in the battle in Lanka, and the hero of that battle is Hanuman, right? And the Mahabharata is the battle of Kurukshetra, and the hero of the battle of Kurukshetra is Arjuna. And Hanuman jumped from India to Lanka and then destroyed Ravana's palace, burnt down Lanka in a big fight. And, Hanuman, definitely not a lazy fellow. Right? Prabhupada quoted that song about, what was it? He was talking about the devotees imitating Hanuman by eating a lot, but then they're sleeping. Right? What did Prabhupada say? Lanka jumping melancholy, when they have to do something that they feel depressed. They don't mind the eating part, but when it comes to doing something, they want to sleep. So this is not a Vaishnava. And Arjuna didn't want to fight. In the beginning, he didn't want to fight. But Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, and then Arjuna decided, yes, I will fight. So Prabhupada said, this is a Vaishnava is active and vigilant, right? Active and vigilant. Pays attention to the details and is vigorous in his pursuance of devotional practice, devotional service, not sitting down and sleeping. Of course, we may fall into the sitting down and sleeping category occasionally, but we should strive to be active and dynamic in our... And then later on, and we see this with Rishabdev, dynamic and active as a younger man, but then in later life retreat and chant and perform bhajan. Well, that's okay. But first of all, very dynamic and very active. This is a symptom of a Vaishnava. And that way then, the mind is automatically engaged and the mind is automatically controlled. And so there's no room for these enemies of the mind to manifest in their material. Because there's also desire to serve Krishna, right? We have to desire. You can't get rid of desire. If you have no desires, what does that mean? Huh? You're dead. Yeah, if you don't have any desire, then you're just a stone, right? So there's nothing wrong with desire, except the calm is driven by passion and material considerations. And the desire of a devotee is essentially to please Krishna. It's very simple. And that pleasing of Krishna is manifest through rendering service to the spiritual master. It's not a very complicated thing, actually. And so that's why there's submission and inquiry and then service rendered to the spiritual master. This is also given in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Savadhamam parityajya mamekam sharanam braja, that you should surrender to me But how to surrender to Krishna is described in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. The details are learnt from a devotee and from pleasing the devotees. That's our mission in life. Our desire is to please the devotees. There is nothing more satisfying than making Krishna's devotees happy or seeing them happy. Because if they're happy, guess what? Krishna's happy. Right? And so this is our methodology. We have desire, but we embrace the Guru's desire. Right? So desires are not out. They can't be. What will suppression accomplish? Right? And so then, anger, manu or krodha, Prabhupada gives the example of Hanuman, Arjuna. You can get angry for Krishna's cause. If somebody's attacking the devotees or attacking ISKCON, or one can become angry in the service of the Lord. So in that way, anger can be engaged and is then sublime. Getting angry because your desires are not being met or frustrated is not a good sign. Not a good sign. Bhishma Dev recommends, if you want to remove anger, if you want to be free from anger, then you have to cultivate the quality of what? You know? What's the quality one has to cultivate in order to be rid of anger? Forgiveness. You have to learn how to forgive others, even if they're behaving foolishly. One of the items that's recommended for human beings is not to be angry. Mind you, and speak sweetly. Of course, Prabhupada does make the point in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that a teacher may be angry at his students, but not at others, right? So it's okay to be, in some situations, it's okay to be angry, but not, all-consuming, lost the plot kind of anger. Sometimes parents have to get angry with their children, right? Otherwise the children misbehave. So anger does have its place, appropriately applied. And of course that's where engagement in devotional service purifies all of our activities. Pride. A devotee can be proud of being in the association of the devotees. He can take some pride in Krishna's wonderful character and qualities, in the quality and character of the devotees, one's associates. So, greed. One can be greedy for more service. Although we have to be careful, you can also overdo it, even as a devotee. These things should be tempered with balance. What's it? Yukta hara viharasya, yukta svapna vabodasu, yukta kamasa, yukta chaitasa kamasu, yogo bhavati dukkha. So balance is required also. Otherwise, even in bhakti, passion can overtake us. We have to be careful. Right? Need to be balanced. So, what is being referred to here in these different qualities coming from the contaminated mind, they can be purified by chanting Hare Krishna, by being engaged in devotional service under the guidance of the Vaishnavas, of the devotees. And then that way the mind and the mind and the enemies of the mind can be subdued or purified, so that the mind then becomes the friend rather than the enemy of the devotee. So we put our faith in engaging the mind in devotional service rather than putting our faith in the mind itself, because we'll be betrayed very often by the mind's perspective on things. You know, one day we think we're absolutely sure about something, mind's completely convinced, then the next day we discover that we were completely in illusion about what was going on. So the mind properly engaged in devotional service will be purified. And that way then the mind and also the senses will be purified. Does anybody have any comments or questions on any of these points? The intelligence. How to tell the difference between the mind and the intelligence? That's a good question. I don't know. Well, put it this way. Yes, it's not uncommon for us to have an inspiration that we ignore, which is actually beneficial for us. And discriminating between the mind and the intelligence. I don't have a ready answer for that question, to be honest. I have to think about it a little bit. Anybody like to suggest? How do we tell the difference between the mind and the intelligence? I can tell you one story. You know, you can go to I was thinking the other day, the Rialto used to be the tallest building in Melbourne, but now if you look, you can't even see it anymore. There's so many other buildings that are bigger than it. But anyway, go to the tallest building in Melbourne and stand on the top. And what will happen? You'll get an impulse to jump, right? That's the mind. Because the intelligence will say, no, not a good idea. Right? So, you know, intelligence is that ability to analyse a situation or a circumstance and be able to ascertain whether it's beneficial for our service or our devotional practice. And you know, we exercise that activity it's happening on the subtle. It's happening on the subtle level. And my personal experience is that if we're chanting Hare Krishna and able to hear that sound vibration of the mantra, if we're absorbing our mind and intelligence in the messages of the Bhagavad Gita and of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam and hearing regularly, then that strengthens our intelligence, because this is all going on a subtle level. We've got the physical body, and the physical activities, but internally we have our subtle action, if you like, right? And that's the mind and the intelligence. And we can't stop either, actually, because they're both a function of that subtle energy, still material energy, right? And by a strong sadhana, we're able to somehow or other, by the spiritual process, if you like, we're able to strengthen our intelligence. We have some clarity of vision and clarity of thought, if you like, by the Shravanam Kirtanam process. And so the mind then becomes subdued or less agitated, and that ability to see clearly within that subtle activity of the mind and the intelligence, we're able to see the correct path, or we're able to make the right choices, and we're able to engage the mind appropriately with the proper direction of the intelligence. So that purification by chanting and by hearing and chanting effectively. It's mentioned the austerity of the body and speech is it speech? To regularly recite the Vedic mantras in the Bhagavad Gita in the 17th chapter. In the austerity of speech is to regularly recite. But of course, if we're regularly reciting the Vedic mantras, then we're also absorbing the mind, and so we're thinking of those things as well, right? So a good part of yoga practice is that ability to purify the consciousness, the awareness of these things, because that's and be able to, intelligence means that ability to see that which is beneficial and that which is not, and that strengthening or honing of the intelligence is a result of our following the bhakti process, right? So good sadhana, regular engagement in hearing and chanting, regularly hearing and chanting the Bhagavad Gita or the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam strengthens the intelligence, so we're then able to use that power of intelligence to discriminate between what is beneficial for our spiritual life and what is beneficial for our material life too, for that matter. So, I think that's how to do it. Anybody got a thought? Pretty hard to work out that, what's that? Because it's all so fluid. There's the mind. There's the intelligence. It's all part of the subtle energy working. But and again, that's the advantage of having the association of the devotees. Because the devotees think and act differently to others. Well, they should be. Sometimes they don't also, but that matra, sparsha, another, we have to be tolerant also. Sukadeva, you want to add anything?
It's very, very subtle.
Yeah, most subtle. Intelligence is the most subtle.
It's hard to distinguish between what's coming from intelligence and what's coming in. But as you pointed out, it's right. Because intelligence will give you the right advice, right thought. Mind can be sometimes taken to the wrong place.
And if you're in doubt, then ask somebody. That's what the spiritual master's for. That's why we have Siksha Gurus. Siksha Guru is the person who can help us to distinguish between what's just mental and what's proper thing to do. Mamahan?
The mind likes to do sense gratification, and the intelligence will help you how to do it.
Yeah. Yoo-hoo, let's go.
If you are a Krishna conscious, the mind likes to serve Krishna, but the intelligence will give you a planning and execution of how to serve Krishna.
Yep.
So that's where immediately something you want to do mind, but when you take a back and think about it, then intelligence come into play.
Yeah.
So that's how you can...
discretion is the better part of valor.
Yeah.
So thinking, feeling and willing, tempered with intelligence. But anything else?
The intelligence helps you find a way to do things.
That's right, how to do it.
Execute.
Yep.
But then intelligence can still be tarnished by, or can we say that intelligence is not, is real intelligence is not covered or tarnished by lust, anger, greed, pride? And it's like, and it's not dictated by false ego, but real ego. Would that be the case? Because, say, even if you're doing devotional service, and then the mind, because if we are devotees, then the mind will ask to do devotional service, and intelligence will show us how to do it. But then if we still have those remnants of anger, pride, greed, then yes, we are doing, the intelligence is telling us to do it, but it's along with those elements.
That's why we engage in the process of bhakti, to purify those tendencies, the residual, the remnants of material life, if you like. And that gets purified gradually over time. So there may be some residual, maybe, not maybe, there are. So again, the process of sadhana will gradually remove those remnants of Kam, Krodh, Mada, Loba, Soka, Moha, Bhaya, fear. Yeah, there'll be remnants. But gradually, over time, and the practice of bhakti, they'll be purified. Yeah, again, that's why we take the association of the devotees, we follow this. We follow Rupa Goswami effectively, and the 64 items of devotional service. That's why the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, is so important, because that gives us all of the things that we need to do to, and even Rupa Goswami's Upadesham, the Nectar of Instruction, gives us all of the things that we need to do to remove lust, greed, anger, all of these different contaminations. And very quickly, if we're a strict sadhaka, regular sadhaka, then these things can be easily mitigated. And then, the more deeper remnants might take time, but it gradually works. Gradually, the more one applies the 9 items of devotional service effectively. Yeah. Okay, I think we should finish here, 25 to 9. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.